I have been wondering if I was going to share with you this morning something that happened to me yesterday. And, um, and I have fought it all night and this morning. But my son walked in the door wearing a tie. I've had a good week. I mean, obviously, I've had some neighbors move into my chest over the last couple of days, and the congestion family. And but other than that, I feel good. It's just that I sound and look like I'm near death, but I'm really not. Good news. So I've had a good week. I had a great breakfast yesterday morning with several of our young men. We met over at City Cafe. Those who weren't working, and Scott Bartleson was actually out of bed at 9 o'clock. It was amazing. And just had a great day. I had a lunch a couple days ago, and this is how I knew I was supposed to share this today. Me and Mike went to lunch a couple days ago, primarily because I just said, hey, I'd just like to have lunch because we both have lost brothers lately. It's something we have in common. And we talked about that a little bit. And, you know, when you go through a loss of someone really close to you, it'd be good if I could kind of know what all's happening, like Nathan, if I could be a counselor and step back away from it and objectively look at me and my emotions and where I am. But when you're in it, it's hard to get back and look at it. Does that make sense? So there are days you're obviously sad. There are days when you go through it 2-3 days and you realize you haven't thought about it. But most of the days, it's kind of like a low-grade fever. It's there, but you don't really know it. You can go on and work. You can function. But there's a low-grade sadness because there are just some things that are now missing. Does that make sense to folks who've lost someone that's a loved one? Most of us in here probably have. I mean, so, excuse me, I'm not catchy, but so I've had this with my brother. He was such a major part of my life, not just his struggles. If he had never had a struggle, some of you have had relationships with someone that had really no struggles much at all, just a beautiful life, and everything was gone like that. Or like your new friend, Mike Cowart Sr. and his wife Esther, who shared here a few weeks ago, who lost a completely healthy 43-year-old son just like that. Walking in the house, listening to the music, that never entered his mind. He told me this week, even when he saw Mike laying there, he thought, he's fallen. Or he's gone to sleep. He just retired and just taking a nap. Some things don't enter our mind right away until all of a sudden they become real. And then they're real for a long time. The saddest thing probably for my father and my mother and me about my brother's life is the normalcy of a life that he did not get to live because of his long bout with alcoholism. If someone takes their own life that is primarily healthy, like we had a 43-year-old former MTSU football player who lived right here in Murfreesboro, deacon in a church, well-respected gentleman, got in some financial trouble that no one else knew about. And so about, I'd say probably 9-10 months ago, at 43, took his own life. No one saw this. Only one person knew he was in financial trouble other than the people he owed money to. So he went from totally alive to totally not here anymore in a split second. My brother's situation was a little different because, excuse me, because it was almost like he took a little bit of his life every day. One thousandth of an inch every day of his life, or a second off of it every day until finally his body, which had become sick from the poisoning, gave out. And in his sleep one night, you guys remember, his body stopped working. It just wouldn't function anymore. So it's interesting how our view of loss, sometimes we experience so much from our own eyes, and we forget to, or it's tough to experience loss through the eyes of our Father. And not only our Father, but the Father of the one we've lost. The same Father. Now, I was going to call John this morning and say, John, look, I can barely talk. I feel fine. I have a nice starch shirt. But I hadn't got it this morning, so take it. But this is so fresh on me from yesterday that for some reason I just thought I may be supposed to take it. And when Mike walked in this morning, and because of our lunch and what we talked about, I knew that's what I was supposed to share today. So, I've been in a place probably for the last week. You go periods of time, it's not that you don't think, but that person you've lost is not at the surface. It's not that there couldn't be pain there. They can be at the surface just like that. There are little triggers that come that bring your loved one to the surface just like that. Okay? I know as I'm sharing this is painful for some of us in here in different ways. But I'm sharing it because I want to give us some hope in an area or two. Okay? Our biggest sadness was that, where am I, Deborah? Our biggest sadness was that he never got to have a family. He never got to have a marriage. I mean, I married him twice. But both times it was to whoever, it was his drinking or his drug buddy at the time, and that lasted about 4.5 days. Both times, it was just one of those things. And but he never got to have family, children, whatever. So yesterday my mother calls me. Now, let me just say this. Kyle, do not put this up this afternoon, okay? Thank you. Because I'm going to Alabama here in just a little bit and sit down and have a talk with my dad. My mother calls me yesterday afternoon and she says, son, well, my mother never starts a conversation with son. She starts every conversation with, hello, son, how are you? And I said, immediately, are you okay? And she said, I think so. And I said, is Daddy okay? And she said, yes. And I said, what's going on? And she said, well, I got a call about 30 minutes ago. And a girl was on the phone. And she said, are you Virginia Woodall? And she said, I am. And she said, do you have a son named Gregory Lynn Woodall? And she said, I do. But he passed away 2 years ago. And the girl started crying and said, I know, I saw that. And then she said, I'm his daughter. And of course, my mother and my dad are totally attached to 50 years, really the last 30 of his struggle. Their last 30 years of his life are memories of struggle and sadness and pain. So that did not come across immediately as something easy. And she didn't know what to think. She had caught her off guard. And it just so happened that 5 minutes before this phone call came, her two best girlfriends in the neighborhood had walked into her kitchen with her. My dad slept through the whole thing in his chair. And she said, "You are?" And the girl said, "I am. My name is Jace. Jace Young. I live in Wichita, Kansas, which is where Lynn lived for a period of time in his life. And I'm 23 years old." And my mother said, "Well, honey, how can I help you?" "Well, I'm so sorry that I don't know how to help you." And she just felt helpless all of a sudden. And the little girl said, "I don't really need help. I've just been looking for my daddy my whole life. My whole life." Now, I'm going to ask you for a second, if you'll shift out of thinking about this through me or my mother or my dad and think about this 23-year-old girl. Look through her eyes for just a little bit. I've spent my whole life not knowing who my daddy is. She said, "My mother told me this past year the little bit she knows about who my dad was. And the details on how her mother and my brother met are personal between them. But they met while Lynn lived in Wichita, Kansas. And Lynn became very fond of her. Very fond of her. And so I told my mother, I said, "Well, Mom, did you get her phone number?" She said, "I wrote it down." I said, "Well, let's hang up, and I'll call her and talk to her, and we'll see." And she said, "Okay." So I called her, and I said, and this voice answered the phone, and I said, "Is this Jace?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I guess I'm your Uncle Tony." And she said, I'm sorry if I've hurt your feelings." And I said, "Honey, you haven't hurt my feelings. You've not hurt my mama's feelings or my daddy's feelings. Nobody on this planet wants you to know your daddy more than us. If your daddy is my brother, I'm telling you right now, your daddy was the kindest man I have ever known." And she started telling me about her life and what her mother had told her. She knew details about my brother. She knew her mother had told her that his nickname was Nash. Now, all of this happened 23 years and 9 months ago. And that his nickname was Nash, and they called him Nash because he moved to Wichita from living with me here in Nashville. And when he told them he had moved here from Nashville, and he talked real country like most of you people, they called him Nash. And the more she talked, the more I knew it in my heart that this is his daughter. So I said, and then she told me she has a little boy who's 1 year old. And I thought, my brother has a grandson. So I said, "Okay, I'm excited to meet you. I just want you to know." And if any of your hearts right now have dug your heels in out of trying to protect from us being hurt, I understand. I have calluses from about 3 hours of heel digging yesterday afternoon, okay? She found out when her mother told her Lynn's name, the mother thought Lynn's name was spelled L-E-N. So the daughter assumed that it was short for Leonard. So she'd been Googling Leonard Woodall and could never find for the last year. And then finally one day her mother said, "Well, her best friend was Elliot, worked at Martin's Nursery," and she called Martin's Nursery and went over there and asked the lady, did she know him? And she said, "Yes, I knew him. He worked for us way long time ago." "How could you forget Nash?" Said his name was L-Y-N-N. And she Googled it, but she got his obituary. So she cried for 2 days. thinking she'd never meet her daddy. So right after I spoke with her, Lynn's best friend from 23 years ago in Wichita, Elliot, called me and said, Mr. Woodall, I need to tell you what has happened. And he told me that she had called him the day before and said, I'm just going to tell you that her mother was Lynn's girlfriend then. And I just want to confirm that for you. And so I called Jace back and I said, honey, send me the 1-year-old picture. I said, are you on Facebook? And she said, I am. And I said, all right, I'm about to throw a realtor off of mine so I can make space for you, and I'm going to friend you. Those realtors just want all my contacts. They don't really like me. And no offense, Mike. So I friended her, and I started looking at her pictures. And her son is Lynn Woodall at 1 year old. Put the little boy, the picture of the little boy up there. That is my brother. Turn that front light down up here, Kyle, if you don't mind. That little boy is my brother. His overbite, I don't know how he got his, but it started because my brother sucked his thumb till he, I don't care, I'm going to tell it. When he went to be to glory in his sleep, he had his thumb in his mouth. After he'd go to sleep, he couldn't help it. And that is and do you see a resemblance to my two oldest grandchildren? This is Kalen. He I guess is what is he? My what? My great nephew. Show the picture of the mom and the little. That's my niece. Her 3 and 4 year old pictures, when you lay them beside my brother's, they're identical twins. My brother's 3 and 4 year old pictures. It is unbelievable. And that is Kalen, my great nephew. So an interesting thing also is Jace's mother is also African American. Beautiful lady named Gina Young. And I talked with her a good bit yesterday afternoon. And some of the most precious stuff I have seen, I asked them not to tag me on Facebook. The little girl just couldn't help it any longer. And she said, can I tell my friends I found my daddy? I said, you can tell the world you found your daddy. Just don't tag me till after tomorrow so I can go talk to my daddy, okay? I just want him to be able to hear that from me first. It is... It is going to be probably a little slower process for my folks who don't know how to come out of the grieving they've been in, not just for 2 years, but for years and years and years. But what I believe is eventually going to happen is that they're going to get to start to relive some of Lynn's life in a beautiful way now, in a happy, healthy way. I'm really grateful that in some ways that Jace did not see her daddy struggle like he did. So to her, he's a hero. Her mother tried to find Lynn when she was 9 months pregnant, but he'd already left Wichita. And so she lost track of him because his alcoholism really began to take over his life, and he would move from place to place to place all over the place and just never could reach him. Now, when I saw that, it's interesting. I had changed my Facebook status about 30 minutes before all this happened. Not my status, my cover photo to that picture of my brother and I about a year before he passed at Uncle Dave Macon Days over here. It's that picture. When I put that up, and that's the first time she ever saw a picture of her daddy, I want you to look at what she wrote. I see me. I was driving to Bellevue when I saw that, and I had to pull over for a while. So I want to ask you this morning, when you look, when you worship, when you pray, when you look toward God, toward your unchanging, everlasting Father, He actually doesn't want you to see Him. He wants you to see you. But we, beholding as in a mirror, when we see the glory of the Lord, the word glory there, it means the essence of. Ben and Bethany are the essence of Brandon and Bonnie. They are the tangible essence of their love. You and I are the tangible essence of our Father, our Creator. We are, as Ben said this morning, His offspring. Next week, we'll have a new group of shepherds that will move forward. Even our existing shepherds went through the whole process just like as if they were, starting from scratch. And next week, Brother John Gardner and I, Wade, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But for sure, Brother John and I, we're going to help whatever this installation thing is. We're going to bless these fellas and their wives and these families as we go forward. Brother John asked if these brothers would pray about one dream that they have for us as we go forward, and told them they have 3 minutes. Which is why I'm sharing my dream today. So I'm not bound to that 3-minute deal. One of these days, who knows what the Lord has for all of us? I might not be the primary person that stands up here from week to week and talk. Say, what? Are you trying to tell us something? No, I'm just saying none of us know what tomorrow holds. But if you never remember anything else I've ever said to you or will ever say to you again, I want you to remember one thing. You look like your daddy. And don't you ever believe anything else. I don't care if I tell it to you. When you look at your Father, see you. See you for who you really are and what you really look like. Listen to Him. Let Him define and disciple you as to who you are. Not the world, not religion, not even good religion. Listen to the Spirit of God tell you who your Father is. Nicodemus really struggled with that when Jesus told him, your mother and your father are not your original parents. I see me. 23 years this little girl has not known who her daddy is. She gets her first look at him and says, there I am. there I am. Well, this is not new news. I'm not breaking the news to my brother today. He's actually known it for a couple of years now. He may be involved in some shenanigans to make all this come about. I don't know. He and Moses and that sneaky Abraham and Deborah, the queen, who's probably telling all of them what to do up there in the great cloud of witnesses. My mother feels much better this morning. Today's her birthday. Yeah. My dad will feel better about Thursday. The only thing it has anything to do with is it's just new. He has felt like a failure as a father. But he's not going to feel that way. So that's what I'm asking for your prayers for. Is for them over the next day or so, tonight when I sit down with him and tell him that his son's life is not over. His son's life is not over. I see me. I hope those 3 words stick with you for the rest of your life. I see me. How was church today? I saw me. How was worship? I saw me. He reminded me who I am. It's a primary work of the Holy Spirit. Jesus said he'll take from what is mine and make it known to you. Let's stand up. Father, I thank you for your great love for us. I thank you that in your mind, in your thoughts, in your logic, there is no question about who we are, who we belong to. I pray that you would, by the work of your great Holy Spirit, erase every doubt in our thought life and in our spirits and in our emotions and in our minds. You would erase every single doubt that we have about whose we are and who we are. We would no longer view ourselves from a worldly point of view, but we would see ourselves when we look into the face of our Father and we see what he sees when he looks at us. And we make that great declaration, I see me. I thank you that when she wrote that, when she put that down, when she looked into his eyes, she was born again. She experienced a newness of life that she had never experienced up to that point. She realized, I thank you that if for nothing else but that day, that moment of seeing those words, I see me, you let me write, you have been ours all along. We just didn't know it. No more doubts. No more listening to other people. No more replaying old tapes. You hear me? No more replaying old tapes. No more listening to men. No more listening to women. No more listening to memories. New. 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 Every morning. New. No old. No more listening to old tapes. No more listening to old thoughts and old memories. No more. New. New. You look like your daddy, John Mueller. You look like your father. You don't look like what you see. It doesn't even matter what Meg sees. It's your Father who defines who you are. It's your God who defines who you are. It's your Creator. I pray for clean communication to overwhelm every marriage and relationship represented here today. No more sarcastic bantering back and forth that does not involve encouraging and loving and blessing one another. And I'm not saying you can't have fun. I'm just saying for one of the little fun sarcasms, there needs to be 10 honoring and blessing messages that are sent back and forth. Same with our friends. And I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm the king of self-cut down and put down. No more self-put down. No more arguing with God about who we really are. We have one answer as we stand before God. I see me. I look like you. Now, I think that I'm just seeing like a Christmas tree, and there are Christmas balls hanging around it, Christmas ornaments, and some of those ornaments are pretty, but some of them have paint that have been painted over them by the person who owns the tree, and on the inside, underneath the paint, is some ugly pain, and we've painted over it to try to hide it, and we're keeping that stuff hanging around. So the Lord is saying He wants that stuff off of your tree. And all those old ornaments mean something to you. I see abortion, and you've lived in shame and guilt. I see secret that you've kept from someone for a long time, but it has haunted you on the inside. You have to take care of that secret. All those ornaments, you can let them go. They are not who you are. You look at your father and you say, I see me. I don't see that ornament. I see feelings that a past divorce, you're still holding a failure of a marriage against yourself, that you failed it. It's not a matter now of exchanging the blame over to the other person. It's a matter of no longer seeing yourself that way. I see the fear of failure on some of our young couples in marriages right now, like you're not going to make it. And that is a lie straight from the pits of hell. There's some people who God has put some things on their heart in here that you've been holding back because you feel like you can't move forward because of your past. Hello. That's a lie. Father, we thank you so much for your mercy and your love and your great grace and your love that has extended through the ages. You are the same through the ages. Your love never fails. Your love never fails. We thank you, Father, that your justice is kindness.